Pokemon Radio Gamescast. We're back. Back again. As always, I'm your host, Ryan. I'm joined today by my lovely cohort of co-hosts, Wyatt.
Hello.
Real creepy-looking Alex.
Just holding it until then. Hi.
Hello, also.
You just really had to make us all
Pennywise
fear for
impression.
our lives just a little bit. Yeah, it's a week. We last week we were talking about things that games do that people think are bad, but maybe aren't actually all that bad. Topic of open worlds was fielded by Wyatt in the 11th hour.
The biggest mistake of his life.
Into the 8th inning.
I was waiting for the right moment because I knew we were going to talk about QTEs for a while. So I was like, I have a lot to say on QTE, so I wanted to get that out of the way. And then it just kind of derailed from there.
And now we're here.
Immediately, open world's too much of a topic for not having its own episode.
For your viewing bemusement.
Perfect example
now
of
we are
that.
here.
This is not the first time we've had an entire episode about open world design.
Oh, and it
Probably
won't be
not,
the
no.
last.
It will not be the last.
Oh,
I don't even
sorry.
think we could probably do a whole nother episode of what we did last week, but this deserves its own 5-hour super extended episode like this is about to be tonight.
Three
This
or four
is-
parts.
This is
Yep.
the Zack Snyder cut of open world discussions.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Does that mean
We're
it's
going to
be
get
in
into
black
that
and white and,
very
like,
shortly.
4x3?
But before we get real heated at each other, we got to get real heated at the games industry.
Mm.
And actually, well, that doesn't even fit this time because it's not the games industry, it's GameStop. Which-
Oh, we are going with that bit. Okay.
oh yeah, we're going to talk about this because
We can't
I
not.
don't know how we wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's really the problem here.
Just
So
stifle it down
GameStop,
and die inside?
GameStop has launched an NFT marketplace. Already, I don't want to talk about NFTs anymore. I don't think anyone else does. We all agree that there's not really a place for them right now. There's no use that they serve in video games that is beneficial to the player and fun as of now. And maybe someone will come up with something eventually, but until then, they're just a massive waste of energy and
literally,
generally
too.
bad. Also, a massive scam. Almost entirely. That's the majority of the situation we're looking at with NFTs right now. So GameStop launched an NFT marketplace. Very shortly after this, as of I think this morning, an NFT of the Falling Man appeared. And for anyone who is sensitive about talking about 9/11, we're going to have a brief talk about it because this is really bad and we need to talk about why it's bad and why you shouldn't do this. So someone put up a NFT that is a stylized depiction or like changed photograph essentially of the Falling Man. For those who don't know what this is, the Falling Man is someone who decided instead of waiting for the World Trade Center to crumble, they would take a jump from the top. Really somber, not a good thing to talk about in general, and just very sad all around. Certainly not a good thing to monetize and sell on your marketplace.
No.
Not really.
On an NFT marketplace.
Yeah.
Yep.
Super unsensitive towards like any of what that picture was supposed to immortalize in terms of like history in general. Like
Mhm.
really, really super weird, super like I don't know what kind of person you got to be to think that's okay. Like I don't know. I was talking about it with Ryan earlier. This feels like a bit out of like South Park or some show that isn't
Always
afraid
Sunny
to
or
get
something.
really yeah,
My
like so a show
God.
that isn't afraid to get really dark with their humor, and this would be like the super out of touch character or business being like, oh, this looks like a great art piece, and they put this up, and all the other characters would be like, what is
What?
wrong with you? Like this is a joke. This is a joke, but it happened in real life.
This is the
Why
bit
does
where
this keep
Charlie
happening
Always
with
Sunny tells you
GameStop?
why it's bad.
Cartman,
Well, it's
Cartman would be the one posting it.
Well,
And
along with this,
Stan or
there's
Kyle or both would be like, "What are you doing?"
there's also a pretty I feel like it's still tone deaf description of the piece
yeah.
underneath the title.
Oh god.
Yeah. Well, we'll note here. So GameStop did not mint, which is what the process of creating an NFT is. Man, it just feels gross.
Yeah, it's
It's a
you got to
dynamite.
imagine. I you got to imagine the process for like making sure a Black Ops 2 emblem is appropriate was probably more in depth than the process to make sure that an NFT on this GameStop site was appropriate. Because I don't think during Black Ops 2's time, all you have to do is just report it and it's gone. Clearly, none of the people working at whatever this is called, the GameStop NFT thing, that there must not be like any vetting process whatsoever when something is posted there. Because if this can get through, like, I don't know. Like you said, it was taken down after the fact because of the uproar, right?
Yeah,
The fact that it was
that's the
even there
important
in
thing. This was not uploaded by anyone at GameStop,
Yeah.
to our knowledge. This is a external person who was selling an NFT on their marketplace.
Mhm.
I think this is why this shows why an NFT marketplace that anyone can post to is probably not a good idea.
Mhm.
Because then it's Craigslist, and people already avoid Craigslist for very similar reasons for a lot of things. So I
What
think,
an unfortunate and accurate comparison.
because hey, at least with Craigslist, you might find like a worthwhile deal. Maybe you find a Sega Genesis or something with a bunch of games for $50. You know, you might
Maybe you
find
get
something
to
good.
actually talk to Craig. Who knows?
You get to talk to Craig.
Mr.
On an
Craig
NFT
List.
marketplace,
Just-
all you're seeing is people selling you NFTs.
Mr.
Garbage.
Craig S. List. Maybe
Just-
maybe you get to talk to him.
Just pray you aren't put on his list.
Yep. Okay. And what makes this even worse is that it came right after Minecraft put out a big post explaining why there will not be NFTs in Minecraft. There are no plans for them. Notably, they don't shut the door forever, but they have stated that unless blockchain or NFT technology aligns with the views of the developers of Minecraft, which it sounds like it never will at this point, they have no plans to allow the technology or introduce it, which the wording here of allow means that they're likely going to go after some of the Minecraft NFT marketplaces that have
things.
popped up.
Neat.
So yeah, this is Minecraft took a hard stance. Immediately after this, Epic Games took a very soft stance
Wow.
and posted that they did the thing where they flipped it around and were like, hey, we don't want to restrict your freedom on our marketplace, so NFTs are okay on Epic, as we'll leave it up to the developer. I respect the intent behind this original statement of we'll respect the developer, but look how that has turned out on every other marketplace that says this. There's a reason that Nintendo had to make the whole quality of approval, seal of approval thing in the 90s, because otherwise it was a bunch of trash.
Mhm.
Like, there's a reason that
it's-
software approval goes through an approval process.
Well, it's what caused that, early 80s video game crash was just completely unregulated,
Utter
make whatever you
garbage.
want, and it was a complete disaster.
Mhm.
E.T. and cereal box games.
All right, that's
don't
the
do
NFT
Disc Checks
discussion.
Quest.
Because
Don't
I
you
don't want to
dare.
talk about NFTs anymore. I don't think anyone else wants to talk about NFTs anymore.
No.
We don't like
No.
them. That's the gist of it.
No.
Keep them far away from me. Burn them.
In other sad
Snapshot 'em.
news, the eShop for Wii U and 3DS is ending in March 2023. This is a really big loss on 3DS, especially, I think, because a lot
I
of
still
these
use
games...
my 3DS.
Yeah, like, I have two 3DSs that I regularly mess around with. One of them is, like, a jailbroken one that has a bunch of, like, custom firmware loaded up, so I can play Minecraft, but, like, the Linux version of Minecraft.
Huh.
Did a bunch of other fun stuff. But one of them is like a base 3DS that I've had forever because I still use like the online stuff in a bunch of games, and it's gonna go away, and I'm very sad. And I'm really, really sad that very few people know this, but Atlas made like a metric ton of 3DS micro JRPGs. Like they're like 5 to 10 hour JRPGs with really unique mechanics based off of the touch system. And all those are basically going to be completely lost because they're, even if you are emulating them, unless you have a 3DS to play them with, they're not going to feel the same because they really use that touchpad and the stylus. Same thing with like a lot of WarioWare style games. Etrian Odyssey with its map making is going to lose a huge section of its gameplay there. So yeah, I think this is generally just like a little sooner than it should be. Because these consoles are still in use pretty actively. The Wii U maybe less, but
A lot less. Don't say
Yeah.
maybe it's the Wii U.
A lot less.
I think the
Way
3DS
less.
especially has such a vast market of games on it that are all really good
Yeah.
and are really exclusive, and a lot of them are download only, so there is not a way to get them anymore.
Well, and like
once
you
this goes
said,
through.
they're really exclusive because of the way that the 3DS is made. It's like some games you just
Yeah.
can't port
It's not
over.
even like they're
It's just
exclusive for money reasons. They're exclusive because they're designed around the 3DS.
Yeah.
with 2 screens.
Yep. 2 screens, and it's your little touch stylus pad.
The only game that I've digitally downloaded, but still, I mean, like, it's not upmarket on its quality. I usually get physical copies if it's for that, but well, yeah. Now I want to play more Rhythm Thief.
I love it. You took a really long time to tell us what the game was, Alex.
No, I was like,
I-
the suspense is killing me. Where are we going with this?
I think we all know by now I'm not good at pacing or telling stories.
I am gonna miss Rhythm Thief and Rhythm Heaven. Actually, Rhythm Heaven Megamix is one of the best games that I've played on that system, and it would not work as well anywhere else. So it's a real shame to see these go, but you still got some time. There's always a chance that Nintendo walks us back a little bit like they did last time, but I am beginning to doubt it more because I think they want to push their user base to the Switch and get more people with that.
You're saying that things that are digital only, supported by servers running them, are never going to be infinitely supported and probably taken down over time? Why would anybody put a lot of sketchy digital currency into something like that? That would just be stupid, quite frankly.
Unheard of.
It's just, yeah, a bizarre situation all around. Sony got the same pushback when they were like, hey, we're going to close the Vita and PS3 stores, and they were like, well, we're not going to close them anymore because people begged us not to.
What if you met
But I will say,
backlash?
I have since tried to use the Vita store again. That store is impossible to use. Close it now because it doesn't work.
Oh god.
Either
Get
fix
rid of
it or get rid of it because it does not work.
Oh god.
Yeah, it's a terrible experience, but the PS3 is largely still fine, I think. Then some better news. Stray came out, very good reviews all around. It's a jolly game. I've been playing some of it and having a great time. I just like to raise some good games up. And another nice thing for console players, Discord has come to Xbox. Surprisingly, before
Hooray!
Discord has come to PlayStation, despite PlayStation and Discord partnering far earlier.
Yes. Which is
Yeah, super
Finally.
confusing.
Finally.
Notably, you do have to go through some weird steps to use it. You have to like use the phone something app. It's either Discord or Xbox's app to like get
It's,
into a Discord party, but then it works on your console once it's done.
Yeah, but the same way that you'd like the same way that I did the Halo Infinite multiplayer beta or whatever, like the Xbox Insider program, you have to be a part of that and then apply to it, and then they'll get back to you within like a week or something, and then you got to use like the external app or whatever. Right
But
now,
it's here.
it's here. Right now, it's only voice chat, which is fine, but it would be cool too if they did like the full capabilities of like at least watching other people's streams and stuff. Because I know like
Yeah.
like I use
Super useful.
Discord to watch anime with friends and other watch groups that don't have computers. They just use their phone and they have a console because they just completely different lives than I do. And it would be nice because they always say I hate watching this garbage on a phone. It'd be nice if they could watch it on an actual screen.
Yep. All right.
In less fun news, if I can add another bit
Yeah.
of news.
You got
to the
another
pod.
little less fun news to
Yes,
bring down to us.
Oh, no.
Ubisoft has canceled not one, not two, not three, but 4 different games this week. One of them
Yeah.
was a Splinter Cell VR game that they were working on.
Oh,
One of them was Ghost Recon Frontline, which they announced not too long ago, which was a Ghost Recon Battle Royale, which everyone was absolutely clamoring for. And then 2 other games that weren't even announced, all canceled.
This is a weird one for me because I think this is more of a Ubisoft has been announcing things too early thing than it necessarily is a bad thing.
Mhm.
Because peel the veil back here, tons of games get canceled that you never know about. Like
Yep.
all the time because for whatever reason they haven't worked, the team behind them is not the right team to make the game. Like a team, classic BioWare example, a team that is really good at making classic RPGs probably isn't going to be great at making a third-person shooter on their first try. Sorry, Anthem. You know? So I think there's a bit of growing pains when it comes to like creating these weird franchises. I also think Ghost Recon Frontline, to me, feels like a thing that was ill-conceived from the start. We're past the Battle Royale craze.
They're trying to take the Ghost Recon franchise and then just put it into every single genre, and that's not really something you can do with Ghost Recon all that well.
No.
It's very specifically designed for a very specific niche, and they're just trying to like throw it at everything, every trend imaginable, and it just doesn't work like that. It's just
they want to make they just want to make a game that will sell 7.6 billion copies, Wyatt.
Also,
is that too much to ask?
If you wanted a generic battle royale, slapping the Ghost Recon title on it is not
weird.
I don't think it's
weird
gonna help.
way to go.
No, yeah.
Because like I'm not saying that Ghost Recon isn't a big recognizable like name, because
every Ghost Recon game recently has not been well received.
It's not. What I'm saying is it's not Mario. You can't put Ghost Recon into like almost any context and somehow have it work. It's not how that works.
You could maybe put Tom Clancy's. I could maybe see them throwing the full Tom Clancy title on that.
Which, I mean, they do for a
but
lot
even
of
then,
projects.
Like most of the Ghost Recon and Tom Clancy projects that are new outside of Rainbow Six Siege are extremely poorly received and have failed very quickly. Splinter Cell VR, I think, is the one that's a real like loss for VR fans, because this game was, I think,
and Splinter Cell fans
said to be further along. Well, the Splinter Cell fans thing, we do know there's still a remake of Splinter Cell coming.
I know, but they've been starved for so long.
They have been, but I have a feeling that a lot of those people likely don't have VR headsets, and so this wouldn't have been a good filler for them either way. Because I think,
imagine you get a custom VR headset and it's the night vision goggles.
Yeah,
they probably couldn't get that done, and that's why they canceled it.
I have a feeling what happened here is they looked at the market for VR and were probably like, we likely can't get this on the Meta Quest. It's not going to run on that. So the market for non-Meta Quest VR right now is very small. Like, it's not small. You still have like millions of users that are, and you will likely be able to sell 1 million copies if you really are going for it.
All playing Beat Saber.
But most of them are playing Beat Saber and don't buy many new games. I'm one of them. So
it's also like I understand if you're starved for a new thing in a franchise, like let's say it's been like 10 years or something. Let's say, like, do you really want the game to end, the Metal Gear drought, to be a VR game? Not,
I mean, we got it with Half-Life, and it was incredible.
But on paper, it's like,
you gotta have a really good.
That. I can't play it. Like, it's still not as proven as just like regular like controller, mouse, look at a screen gameplay. Like, even like audience wise, like not nearly as many as people have it. Like, it's just weird. I don't know. It's almost like having it be like a mobile game spin-off or something, where it's just like, oh, we're not going to put that much effort into it because most of our fan base is adults that will use the computer, but just in case we get some other guys in, we're going to spend 5 minutes on a mobile thing or whatever. It's like, oh, well, this isn't a main installment.
Tells us that if we put in no effort and put it on mobile, we'll get the most money that way.
We'll get children.
Exactly.
All right, so now to talk about the things that are, I think, the biggest news from this week. A single piece of news that really just blew everything out of the water. LeBron James is in Multiverses.
And
I love this.
He's being voiced by Barrett's voice actor, isn't he? From Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Really?
I love this so much.
What?
That's amazing.
Now, is he a base character, or is this like an add-on with him in it?
I have no clue. I don't know what this is considered to be part of. He's a bruiser.
I know what it is. The lore is that, if you remember, in Space Jam 2, LeBron James' son wants to make video games. This is the video game that LeBron James' son has always wanted to make, and he put his dad in it. There you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this information, but logging into the website asked me for my birthday,
That's-
which is
I mean,
concerning.
that is not
That
at
is
all
weird.
Being
That is-
multiverses.
That is my
target
that is my
demographic.
head canon, and I'm sticking to it. I don't care what the official lore is. Mine's better. Get over it.
Yeah, so I think he's just a base character because Multiversus, when it comes out, is free to play. So what you get if you buy into the Founders Packs, which are the cost of like a normal game, you get character unlock tokens equivalent to what I assume like the dollar amount. Let's see, how much does 15 character tokens cost?
These characters aren't randomized in a
$40. So okay,
sort of
it's
a
not
a
it's not as
box
generous as I
situation, do
assumed
you?
it was.
Excuse me,
Oh,
not loot box surprise
Oh.
mechanics.
You get to
Alex.
pick the characters you unlock. So you don't
Okay.
like spin the wheel. To my knowledge, it doesn't. Nothing on this indicates that. Yeah, and I
I
haven't
just
heard
want
anything about
to
that.
beat
so
the
it's-
crap out of Batman as Shaggy.
I love that Batman and Shaggy are the picture characters for this game.
Yeah.
I assume LeBron James might be on there too now, which I love. Like this
Listen,
is
man,
this is just
the-
one of those crazy video
the-
games that I can't believe this exists, but really.
Listen, man, I just
The
wanna play
unstoppable
Iron
trio.
Giant. I just want to play as Iron Giant. All right, that's all I
Yeah.
want.
Superman.
That's all I want.
I am so curious
Please
to
let him
see
still be
how
voiced by Vin
well this
Diesel.
game does. I am so curious to know.
Yeah.
I'm ready for Multiversus to come out. I'm probably not going to play it, but man, do I want to watch other people play it.
Absolutely.
I mean, from what I've seen,
Can't wait to see
it
the
looks
Twitch
pretty good.
headlines with this.
it's in that tricky situation of like you're not going to be as good as Smash. It's just
Yeah.
not going to happen.
I think
Like,
the
let's
free-to-play
not
thing on
even-
here is probably guaranteeing a degree of success because
Mhm.
I think that means the cost to get this is so easy. And I'm just imagining how many people are like, yeah, this free, I'll download it. I can get that skin for LeBron James of like his away team uniform. I'm gonna get
Mhm.
that. I'm so imagining how crazy this game could be in terms of success if it does it right.
I mean,
Hopefully
Brawlhalla's
it
free to play,
does.
right? And Brawlhalla's
Yep,
been
Brawlhalla has
around
done very
for
well for itself.
a long time now.
But Brawlhalla is also a vastly less expensive game to make because it's 2D. It doesn't have licensed characters for the most part. So yeah, I wonder how much this game cost.
It doesn't have Shaggy in it. That's the big problem. That's the problem. with
That
all
is the
these
big problem for
Platform fighters. That's
Brawlhalla.
the problem.
All right,
Poinks, man.
I do want to move us into our main topic, but before we do, we need to pay for our sins. We have openly trashed As Dusk Falls multiple times. I 2 weeks ago said I was hearing good things about this game, and I would try it when it came out and report back if it's good. It's good. I take it back, and I will say more when it's coming. And I also think I have to declare that this is going to be the next month Game Pass game. So clear 70 gigabytes on your hard
Oh.
drive because
God damn you! I'm gonna be
We
downloading
all-
it for
we
longer than I'm gonna play it.
trash this game.
Ryan,
We have to give
Ryan,
it.
I make 3D models. I don't have that much space.
You're gonna blow up this poor kid's
You got a couple
computer
weeks
to
to
play
figure-
As Dusk Falls.
I have to buy 3 separate hard drives.
Still have full Infinite installed on my PC. You think I have enough space for that? No.
God.
So I want to
Oh,
do a quick
Jesus.
run through of this game because I do think a lot of the criticisms we had are still valid. The art style is an acquired taste. It has stopped bothering me now that I am 4 hours into it. It no longer bothers me. But the thing that does bother me is that this game seems to have lacked a technical polish phase, and that
Oh,
it does
no.
not detect that I have a 1440p monitor. So I can't change the resolution. I'm stuck at 1080p.
Are
for some
you
reason.
telling me, Ryan, that the characters are JPEGs and not PNGs?
I don't know. So this is the other thing that's really strange to me is some of the cutscenes in this game, which is the whole game. The whole game is cutscenes because it's very Until Dawn-y is probably the best comparison I have. You're doing a lot more things than you do in Life is Strange, but they're all basically QTEs and they're determining the path you're going to take. The thing that's really good about this is it has way more branching than any kind of Life is Strange game, to a degree that's pretty crazy. Like, I've played through the entire first book of this game now, which is like 4 or 5 hours of gameplay, and in that time there were like 4 separate times where the character you're playing as definitely would have died if you made the wrong choice and did the wrong thing. And I'm so curious what would have happened if they did. There's a lot of other things. You make choices that might get other characters killed, and this is a very grounded game. It's set in regular world where a bullet kills you if it hits you, and so you need to be aware that if you're in a robbery and things are going down and you threaten someone with a shotgun, yeah, it's really interesting how well some of the characters have been handled and whatnot. I think there will be downsides, but I want to wait until I'm done with the game to know if they get addressed or not. But at the very least, this is as engaging as something like Until Dawn or Detroit Become Human to me. Part of that is just that I'm very into like crime drama when it's well done. So I think for people that aren't as into that, it may not hit as hard, but I think it's very fun so far.
From what I remember too, because with these kind of games, it's really hard to get a lot of information from trailers, right? Like you might get
Yeah.
a little bit about the story, the setting, but a lot of it is just going to be how it looks, because that's all we really have to go off of. And that's
And
kind of what we were talking
This
about.
does not present well. I still don't like this art style. I'm not gonna say it's bad anymore, but I don't like it. Like, it's not to my tastes. And I think judging by comments on this game elsewhere, it's not to most people's tastes. I don't really know how they would fix it, because I think after playing it, the reason it has this art style is clearly because it branches so much. And I don't think they would have had the budget to do like a Life is Strange full 3D models for everything and have this many story paths that are all fully voice acted and everything if they didn't do this art style. So I think part of it is a concession that had to be made. Part of it is clearly an artistic choice.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like I feel like people would be fine. Not like the issue isn't that it's like 2D. The issue is that it looks like pictures that was run through a
Photoshop filter.
Photoshop filter.
Yeah, which
Like,
I wonder
that's
if
the
it is.
problem.
I haven't looked at what their process was for this, but that could
think-
actually be what
I
happened.
feel like we talked about this before and we said it
Yeah, but we
wasn't.
were all speculating. We don't know for
Okay.
certain.
There wasn't enough info when we first talked about it.
Yeah, I'll check if I can find anything that says how this game was developed, but to my knowledge, these are like actual painted characters, at least from what I've seen so far, but it's hard to tell. It really could be image editing, but I think we just don't know. I'm very curious if they do like a developer diary about this, because it's very interesting.
Which, if it is painted by, artists, it's pretty impressive in terms of like the level of detail
Yeah.
they're
And I'll also
able
say
to get
the
in, but-
mixing of 3D model with character art happens way less than the trailers make it look.
That was the
Because
other.
the vast majority of it is when you're in a car, which is like 2 times so far. Like, there's not a lot in this game that is taking place in a moving thing, but when it is, the thing is moving at full frame rate, and the other stuff is not, which has looked good like 2 times and has looked bad another 2 times, so I'm really split on if that's good or bad. I think it's just a weird art style mix, and I think once they made that decision, there's not really any going back because of how much work is involved. So, yeah, I'm super curious what the takeaway from this is going to be. But, man, this needed like an extra... I think this game would have been really good with an extra 2 weeks of polish, because there's a couple of minor things that are really detracting. That the fact that it's all in 1080p and looks very blurry on my screen because it's not lined up to the 1440p pixels looks bad. Like, that makes the game look almost like it's giving it a bit crush to look, where it looks like I'm streaming it and I'm not streaming
Oh,
it. This is
no.
downloaded to my
Which that
computer.
combined with an art style that you're not a fan of.
Yeah,
It's
it
just,
combines to make it look very muddy, which is a shame.
Yeah.
I hope they have said they're aware of this bug and they're fixing it, so I think this will be fixed relatively soon, but it is a shame that it launched like this. The other thing's the control scheme. So
I mean, at least it's a bug and not an actual.
the control scheme for this game... Oh no,
Over
did we
to
lose
Alex.
Alex?
The game
Oh, no.
killed Alex.
What is on the 3% layout? The control scheme for this game involves you having... Oh, that's the wrong video thing. There's the right one. There we go. He's back now. Control scheme for this game, you have a couple options. You can use a controller, you can use a mouse and keyboard, or you can use your phone. And the game repeatedly reminds you when you launch the game and like get ready to play that you can use your phone as a control option.
Kind
Is
of
that
like
They're
for the
pushing
multiplayer
it
type
really
stuff?
hard.
So it's kind of like
it's
a
for-
Jackbox game, like
You
setup
can play it
almost?
like that. So you can legitimately
Okay.
play it like that with multiplayer, local and online, where people will all see the decisions and you can vote, and like the highest voted decision and what gets made, which could be really fun. I wonder how well it works because this game is long, and it's very contiguous. It is not a jump in, jump out thing, because you really need all the information that came before to know where you're at right now. So I wonder how well that will work if it's not like you're doing a full playthrough of the game. The controller control scheme you basically have a destiny pointer, and you do point and click on the screen like a visual novel to do things, and then when a QTE happens, it will say swipe and a direction, which on controller is flicking the thumbstick in that direction, which feels fine. That feels pretty good. I don't have any problem with that. It's just the language of swipe. It's clear that they're having to find words that are universal to all of these different platforms.
Yeah.
And that reads weird on a controller.
Which like you can plug in a controller and the game will usually change the thing that comes
I think
up
the
to a
confusion here is
different
because you can
button
play it
prompt.
multiplayer with everyone using different inputs.
Oh god.
So they have to be universal to all the inputs.
What a horrible nightmare.
Yeah, it's a nightmare of language.
Yeah.
You have like spin it in a circle, which is just a circle. Nothing tells you what button on the controller to use. And as I found out partway through this game in a relatively important QTE, is that only the A button on the controller counts as the button when it says to press a button.
Oh.
So when it says tap, that means tap the A button. When it says mash, that means mash the A button. I mashed the B button, and someone died.
This is a Tower
Feels a little
Babel
bad.
situation.
Yeah, I think there's just a couple of things where, like, maybe if you're in single player or something, this could have been changed. I don't know. It's a weird situation, but the story is well done. Dialogue has felt very good, and there's a lot of it. The voice actors are doing a really good job. Outside of the fact that you can tell these were recorded at different times, and so you'll sometimes hear a line that is mastered differently than another line, and you'll be like, that person was in like a different room when they recorded this,
Maybe
which
using
isn't a
different
huge
mic
issue.
or something.
Yeah, it's not a huge problem, but it is noticeable when like one character's volume level will jump a little bit, or their voice will sound slightly higher. And it's clear it's the same voice actor. It's just different tech or different mastering or something whenever they were recording it. So yeah, it's weird. I think the end result is that this game feels simultaneously really high budget and really low budget at the same time, which is really an achievement. But overall, I think it's far better than we were giving it credit for. So I wanted to mention
We'll
it.
see.
Yeah,
We'll see how it fares going through the picky artist filter, and we'll see if it survives.
Do the Brett filter?
in a
I don't
month.
know. The Brett filter may hate this game.
We'll have to see. I don't know. I've enjoyed many things I've dunked on in the past, so we'll have to see.
All right, it's time for the open world talk. We gotta discuss some open worlds because guess what?
So
we play some open world games. Yeah, let's ask your question.
Well, you were talking about coming for Brett's throat. So do I have to be like the judge and officiator of this talk?
So for context, what happened is that I realized midway through saying that I generally don't like open world games. That statement wasn't true. It's not true because I do like a lot of open world games. I just don't like particular open world games. I'm also an open world designer.
Yeah.
On Diablo 4.
That is a thing, huh?
So I don't want to be too critical here. There's a degree of discussion that I need to encourage to justify why my job exists. It's great, I'm having a good time, but it's not an open world. Alright, that answer your question, Alex? You feel confident about that now? Right.
Good.
So I'm gonna start us out
all set
on a simple question, which is when do open worlds benefit games? What are times that open worlds are actually the right call? Before we talk about when they're not.
That's a good idea. I think the most welcoming like genre to put an open world in is just anything that has like adventure as a subtitle, because I mean you're going to be exploring things anyway, and with the right team of people you can just kind of make an open world version of all like whatever older versions of that same action adventure game, and it would kind of just it makes sense. You can't really I was gonna say you can't really make an open world like platformer like Sonic or something, but then I stopped myself.
Well, listen, it
But
seems like they still can't.
I mean, you're still right.
yeah. It's one of those things where you can really feel while you're playing a game like, oh, this does not fit, rather than, oh, I'm so glad they have an open world for this. Like, at least in my
Yeah.
experience, it's very like, this was a weird decision, where when I'm playing an open world game and the open world fits, is just like, oh, I'm just so happy I could do these things. And then when I step back and look at the list of things that I can do, oh, it's an open world game. Yeah, I don't know. I think also another thing for me at least is your art team better be 6 out of 5 stars, because my god, if your open world does not look top of the line, I mean, like, no one's gonna want to explore it. But if it does look really good in whatever art style you're doing, I mean, like Shadow of the Colossus, Ghost of Tsushima, games with great art styles, I think that just kind of, if you can handle putting a huge open world into an art style like that, I think that the style benefits that choice, and that choice can benefit that style as well, because you get so many different environments and
I think
biomes and such.
there's also, specifically open world level designers as well, because that's a whole different bag than having an enclosed space to deal with.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, there's
it's
different
definitely.
processes to my knowledge. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about anything related to Diablo 4 with this because the game's not out. But for
Come
other
on, Ryan, we're
studios,
friends. You can tell us. We won't say
Hypothetically,
anything.
play the
hypothetically,
game when it
maybe in
releases.
Minecraft.
That's what I'll tell you to do.
Ryan, we're gonna ask you
That's what a
questions.
real friend would do.
We're gonna ask you questions. Blink once for yes. Blink twice for no.
That's one link.
But I remember around when I want to say Horizon Forbidden West was coming out, we talked about a few different takes on open world design. And we know a few studios will take the approach, I think this is what From Software generally does, where they'll have sub areas designed and then put together into an overarching area, and then you'll have people like working on the borders of every area to make sure they align and have like a coherent feel, but these sub areas are designed separately. And then there's cases where I don't have an example of this off the top of my head because I can't think of many games that don't have like regions. But even in games that do have regions, it's hard to tell if like they were designed as separate regions or if they're designed as a contiguous open world. And I think a lot of that just comes down to planning. Like, I think maybe Far Cry might fall into that camp of you might have someone responsible for every different, like whatever they call their region breakdowns of every area, where you have like when you are in the map and you mouse over this area and an outline comes around that's like, hey, this is Central Yara or whatever. Someone probably was responsible for that area, but then those games generally don't have the same separation feeling that other games will have with like different art style regions like Elden Ring. So I think it becomes a little more interesting if you look at how, if they're designed in that kind of like Metroidvania way where they have passageways to different large areas, or if they have more large open space that connects to large open space. So yeah, there's a few different types that fit into this.
Something that I think of when I think of like a good like open world game and something that complements an open world design really well. I've said this many times. The best open world games give you really interesting ways to move around your world, right?
Yes.
Spider-Man 2016 comes to mind.
Yes,
That game
absolutely.
would be so much less fun if they did not nail the swinging. And it feels perfect, it looks perfect, and it makes the game so much more fun because of it. Like I will
Yeah.
literally just hop on sometimes just to swing around because that's how good it feels. And
It feels like playing a classic racing game where you'll hop on just to like go do one race and then you're like, okay, I'm good for the next 6 months. Sometimes I'll
Yeah.
just play Spider-Man for like a couple hours and be like swinging around. I'm like, all right, I'm good now. Got my Spider-Maning in until the next one's out.
like another good example is I mean, Infamous gives you, especially, I have the most amount of experience with Second Son, but that gives you so many cool, like you have 4 different powers that provide different ways to get around the city. It's like, oh, if you're smoke, you go in through vents and then you go up to the top of a building, or you can like turn into smoke and go through fences and stuff like that. Or if you're Neon, you can run really fast. If you have video powers, it has like wings that you can fly around. And
Or if you're not doing like a
just
game that's super powered, you have all the different cars in GTA,
Mhm.
horses in Red
Yeah.
Dead. As long as you make some interesting traversal
Or
tie-in, I think it works generally really well.
or all the different kinds of vehicles in Cyberpunk.
You say that,
Talk
I
about
did
games
like
that do
riding
it
around on my
well.
motorcycle.
There are a bunch
No,
of
the
different,
motorcycles are fun.
all the vehicles feel very distinct from one another in Cyberpunk. Like there's always the super fast car that you find in a cave somewhere. That's my favorite. Go fast and then crash it
Yeah,
into my
don't
location.
turn, just hit the
Plus-
wall and then start again.
Plus, I will say,
There's that, and there's the big monster truck, which I do love big monster trucks and their tires.
you can get some cool body mods in that game. Like I had one that allowed me to like double jump essentially.
Yes, yeah, I got
So
that
there's a
one.
lot of because it's very vertical, so there's a lot of cool maneuvering you can do with that. But no, like mainly that's one thing for me is that like if you have a character that has a really interesting like form of traversal, I think open world games work really, really well for that because it gives you
Yeah.
that space to really just
Yeah.
go nuts. Which
I
is
generally
partially
agree
why
with that for sure.
which is partially why I'm the only one looking forward to Forspoken because it looks like it'll have some really cool, fun traversal.
You aren't the only
through
one. I'm looking forward to that game too. I think the
okay.
previews that
hope-
they've shown have looked very unoptimized, and I'm
I
worried that the
hope-
game will not run
Which
well.
is fair. Which I, agree
hope
with.
it
I
doesn't
agree with.
bomb. Is what
Right.
I hope to be able
Maybe
to
it'll
look
be
forward to it.
the bomb.
Can actually going off of Wyatt's bit, sort of with the fun methods of traversal. I think definitely if a game lends itself towards more of a sandboxy type, or if it has a really fun to engage with physics engine,
Yeah.
you can do open world. It's also very doable in smaller closed in levels for different like test chambers and things like that. But
I think those are the
it's-
types of games where it most like doesn't really matter if it's open world or not. Like it won't hurt it to be open world, and it won't not hurt it to not be open world.
yeah, like
I know I just
the
used,
one
like,
that
2 double
immediately.
negatives.
But I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind with the fun ways of traversal and physics engine is absolutely, and the one that I've played, Just Cause 4.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
All
for
the
that.
Just Cause games have very fun
I
traversal.
love heating up my system with it, with all the explosions I can get on screen at once.
I mean, that's a good example of like why the Just Cause open worlds I think are generally some of the biggest, just because they want to provide so much empty space for you to fly through. And that's like one of the few valid excuses to have an empty open world. Like
It's with
give
that
me
empty
canyons
space.
to use the wingsuit in, and I'm happy.
Yeah, it's empty space that's so easily made to be fun throughout the various methods that you have at your disposal through the game.
Great.
It's not like you're just walking through an open field, and that's it.
Before we get too much further, I do want to ask a question to everyone of, do we want to count games that have separate open worlds? Say like Metal Gear Solid 5, where it has 2 big open zones. Do we consider these to be open world?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I think who was it recently? I think it was actually Sonic Team that tried to coin the term like open zone recently, where they were describing the new Sonic game, and then I was thinking to myself like that, like every other like game that does an open world well has already like done that before. Like even it's not the same thing, but I feel like it has kind of the same impact to the player, where like Ghost of Tsushima has like 3 stages of the main island, and you can't like they might as well be 3 cordoned off areas. Like they have pretty different like main biomes and stuff. They kind of feel like 3 different like levels, I guess, but they're all completely open, and by the end of the game you can travel between them completely openly.
Yeah.
But I think even in a case like MGS5, where it's like different cordoned off zones that are still open, I think
As long as you can go anywhere, it kind of fits the bill a little bit.
Yeah, I think when you start to kind of lose that idea is when like, okay, you're Halo 1 and all your missions are just regular old first person shooter missions, but you have like one or two that are kind of like open, and like I wouldn't call those open
Yeah,
world missions.
I
wouldn't
totally
call it
get
an open
that.
world
Well,
game.
Same reason I wouldn't count like a Mario game as an open
Oh.
world game, is because a lot
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
levels don't really fit that moniker. They still
For-
get from A to B.
Until you get to like
my
Odyssey or whatever.
for my experience, the most recent Hitman trilogy sort of threads that line.
Yeah, Hitman is
feel-
one of the ones I think is hardest to categorize because there are very open levels, but I'd throw that more in the camp of a Dishonored, of just having large open
Yeah,
levels and not really an open
Yeah.
world, because you don't really travel for any reason in
Yeah.
that game.
Yeah.
And the reason I say
There's
yes,
no
to
like canonical / non-canonical back and forth between the areas, like going
Yeah.
back to a zone.
and the main reason I said like yes to your initial question was because what immediately came to mind was Witcher 3, which has almost all
Yeah.
of the open world stuff that you can
Yeah,
think of,
yeah.
but it has White Orchard, it has Skellige, it has Novigrad, that kind of thing. So it has all of it. It's just, if you want to go to one place, you just gotta go to a map screen first.
Yeah. 'Cause I think that expands our categorization of open world to be a little bit more generous, which I think will benefit some of these later questions. Our next one, is it can an open world be put into a game as a secondary thing? Can you design the game first and then say, hey, what if we made this open world as a secondary thing? Not saying that you're retooling something that was originally necessarily meant to be purely linear, but can you take a game that is designed to be a level based or not designed with open world in mind and turn it into an open world thing relatively painlessly?
Now, are you saying that's like the
Technically-
main mode of play is the open world? Or it's like, oh no, this is a separate like feature.
No, main
set
mode of
mode.
play. Like take
Okay.
the
but
game
at
and make
some
it open
point,
world.
yeah, at some point in the
Technically-
development, they decided to
Okay,
make that
okay.
the change.
It wasn't the first decision. Like the mechanics were made first, and you were like, okay, we could then fit this into an open world. Do you think there are games
Technically-
that do this well?
I mean, the two examples that come to mind, one of them was bad and one of them is mixed, right?
Yeah.
In terms of their overall. The mixed one obviously is Halo Infinite. I think I'm more mixed on it than I think most of everyone else here.
Far more.
But right.
And by mixed,
Um,
compared to us, you are positive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, to clarify
Well,
that
well,
statement.
I enjoy it, but I also recognize that there's a lot of issues involved with it.
It's not where you would want it to be
No,
if it were like
not
a
at all.
ground up open world game.
Not at all. But I didn't hate its inclusion overall, I guess. The other one, the bad one that comes to mind is I can't remember the exact which one it was, but wasn't there a Dynasty Warriors game
Yes.
that was open world?
That's one of the games I
Right.
wanted to talk about, which is Dynasty Warriors 9.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, Dynasty Warriors 9 I think is the poster child of this going extremely poorly, which is a shame because I do think there is massive potential in an open world Dynasty Warriors. I think that you could do
Makes
something
sense.
really cool with this, especially in the Empire series. But they just put out the Empires for Dynasty Warriors 9, which is the open world game, and the open world is completely pointless. You don't do anything in it. You go to a map screen and then you do your missions. You don't do any. There's no like there's no army building. There's no fun mechanics that make use of the open world. It would be fun like to stage a like camp or something outside of an enemy fortress. That would be awesome.
With battle formations and stuff like that you could set up.
Yeah, I like that would be so cool.
Oh.
It'd be so cool if you basically had like Mountain Blade in Dynasty Warriors, but with like Dynasty Warriors combat where it's 1 versus 1,000 type thing. No, they went the route of least resistance and just decided, okay, well the open world one wasn't well received. Let's just take the open world out of the open world game and then retool it to be a regular game that's now just worse in every way because it wasn't intended to be a regular Dynasty Warriors. So yeah, don't play Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires, anyone. It's not good.
I feel like it's one of those things where it's like you only realize that it was put in like half-assed halfway through development or something, like if it's like bad. Like I feel
Mhm.
like if we were to go through the development history of every single game that we would consider to be open world, I feel like there would be a few that would be like, oh, we didn't mean for this to be open world at the beginning. It just kind of turned into that over time and we accepted it. I feel like we would be surprised because I feel like a good open
We
world
probably
you
don't
wouldn't
know a lot of them.
you wouldn't feel like it was added in halfway through. Like I don't even
Yeah.
I genuinely, because the actual development history is so muddled with so many like random theories and rights and wrongs and stuff, I do not know if the open world for Halo Infinite was actually added in halfway through, but it feels
It
like it.
felt that way for sure.
Exactly, because you can play the entire game without doing it, like I did because I hated it. And like, I don't know.
At that point,
it's
what's the worth of the inclusion if you can play the whole game
exactly.
without interacting
Yeah.
with it?
I feel like the big thing, which kind of going off on a little like half tangent, I feel like a big reason for having that thought process of should we add this in halfway through or whatever. I feel like most of the time it isn't like, oh, because we actually genuinely want the player to have this much explore. It's more like, oh well, this is the big thing now. Like this is the trend. I mean, if we don't do this, what is this game going to be doing?
People are going to see our game
different
as
than the last
lesser because
one?
it doesn't have an open world.
Because
But
exactly
GTA 5 has an open world, so we need to have
Yeah.
one.
'Cause-
Yeah, I get that thought process for sure.
So here,
It's like the equivalent of people thinking the third pounder is less meat than a quarter pounder.
I like
That's a good example.
so here's an interesting. I don't know if this counts because it's less an open world game and more a battle royale, right? But a battle royale is still kind of it's an open. Anyway,
You can make the argument.
Fortnite wasn't originally a battle royale. It didn't have an open world. It was like a
Ooh,
wave
Fortnite's
based
a weird
horde
one.
mode,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
eventually it kind of evolved into this like open
Fortnite's weird
open world.
because I think when you take the
battle
idea
royale.
of base building and open worlds go really well together because you can have like having a world with the ability to build a base and then connect it to other bases and whatnot. Super fun. That's like a
Right.
you make that, you have Minecraft, and Minecraft is going strong.
But what's
So
one thing you don't do in battle royales? Camp, because you
Yeah.
have to keep moving all the time.
keep moving. It's such a weird combo,
Yeah,
and
Well,
I think
the
we're a
weird thing
bad
is-
group to talk about this because none of us are hugely into Fortnite battle royale
However-
building.
Old.
However, there is one of us in this group that has been playing it off and on recently with some of his little cousins.
Yeah.
And what I
Okay,
can
you
say,
saved your argument. I was about to be very, very scared for a second.
and what I can say is that they've updated the game so much since then, where it's
Oh, it's
kind of
crazy.
embraced that like open world, quote unquote, like battle royale aspect more. There's a lot more like movement stuff. Like they straight up stole the like crouch slide physics from Apex Legends, that kind of thing. There's like a
lot of
no
things from
build
Apex.
mode at like which I think a lot of people play now. There's like no
Mhm.
building whatsoever. So it's interesting because it's one of those games where it's so constantly updated with new features all the time. And so it over time it's really embraced that, but it definitely took a while to get there.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be harassed online for having the thought when Fortnite was mentioned. Oh, you mean low poly Days Gone?
That's such a weird comparison.
I-
to
Weird,
think
but I
about.
guess you're right.
I guess kinda.
I'm gonna be honest, I can't draw the line in my head. I'm
Maybe
having a
the
hard
zombie
time.
shooting thing, but then it's
That's-
also just
I
Left 4
like
Dead.
the non battle royale version of Fortnite.
But there's no base building in Days
The Days
Gone.
Gone is open world.
It's got a bike.
The
And there's
line blurs
cans
the more
in
you
Days
think about
Gone.
it.
The harder you think
I-
about this, the more that it falls apart.
Sorry, wait, so
Yeah.
if a game has camps, it's like Fortnite.
Yes.
No,
I-
if
I-
it had
I get-
camps, it's like The Witcher 3.
I think we can take this idea further though, Wyatt, because I think battle royales are their own special weird kind of open world where they really don't have to worry about a lot of things that a single player open world game has to worry about. And also like, the battle royale game mode is it has a lot of requirements to it that kind of change open world design. Like if there's a big empty area that's kind of like more fine because the map is shrinking, you're gonna need to run through spaces quickly anyway. You don't really have time to
And there
if
might
every
be
single.
items in there because of like,
Yeah,
randomly placed
yeah.
items and stuff.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think
gonna be
a
another thing with
game
loot.
that is kind of a unique situation with this is Modern Warfare 2019 has a battle royale, and I
Mhm.
forget which way it went. If it was the battle royale map came first, and parts from that got put into regular multiplayer, or maps from the multiplayer got drag and dropped onto the battle royale map. I forget which
So
way.
it depends on which battle royale you're talking about. If you're talking about Blackout, that was that
Warzone
map was
specifically is the
right
one that I
because
have
Blackout
experience with.
was a map that was just all multiplayer, like classic multiplayer maps smushed together, and
Hmm.
then Warzone was its own thing, and then they took a bunch of stuff from Warzone to put it into core multiplayer, which is
Mhm.
how we got Promenade, everyone's
Yeah.
thing.
Which I was gonna say, like that it's weird, this is bending the topic a little bit because this is for multiplayer games and it's just a weird kind of like twist on it. But I think it still fits because that inclusion of Warzone the way it was included, I think a lot of maps from the Warzone map are like perfectly fine. The one the
The
ground
TV
war map that was
station.
there. Yeah, the TV station one's good. The ground war map that was there from the beginning that's had like the logging area or whatever. I forget what
Oh
it's
yeah.
called. There's like the two long buildings and the
Mhm.
big smokestack. The one on the docks with all the shipping crates,
The
that's like a fine
farmland.
map. Yeah, the
Krav
farmland.
Krav
Farmland one's
Krav
okay.
Kravcroshnich farm.
Yeah.
Really tried.
But then at the same time, you get things like Promenade that are just like it's fine in the Warzone mode because it's
Talking a
the
larger map.
firefights are different and you're running through different directions. It's not
You can
so
also go
turned
into
off
the
and
buildings
small.
on the side to make it
Exactly,
actually
yeah.
interesting.
But it's that kind of thing where it's like, okay, we spent a lot of time on this Warzone map, which is I haven't played a lot of battle royales, but it's one of the better battle royale maps
Fine.
that I played on. I think it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Uh, we put so much time into it. I mean, we got to kind of milk it for every single thing that it's worth. So we really
Mhm.
need to make sure that we get like X amount of maps from it. And in that situation, which I feel like has a chance to kind of become more popular, like if Apex and Titanfall ever like into the same game someday
Oh,
soon, like, and they
oh
have
my
to keep
god.
that battle royale aspect, like you could see whatever what's it called, the Thunderdome or Boneyard or whatever, becoming like its own version of a Titanfall map or whatever. And you
Mhm.
got to kind of like wonder when at that point, is this really a good decision overall? It's kind of unavoidable in that kind of unique scenario, but like, is this as good a Titanfall 3 map as it is an Apex Legends 2 section of the Battle Royale? And I see you vibrating in anguish
No.
because it's you kind of have to like there's no way, especially with how different those games are in this weird futuristic scenario that I've just completely made up off the top of my head, but it's like you can't really get to a point where you know it's iconic for both. How many times have like, oh, this battlefield map is great for rush but it's kind of for conquest, and this battlefield map is great for conquest but it's not really that great for rush or anything else. It's just a good conquest map and that's it. Kind of similar to how all the base game Halo Reach multiplayer maps are all campaign levels, just at different like times of day with the different like lighting filter on them, pretty much. Uh, I guess I don't know, like guys, Overwatch 2 kind of stole some things from Bungie, didn't they? But it's like you can even tell playing those that like this felt designed for a mission. It's fine, but like how many in the sea of Halo maps, how many Halo Reach ones are like, oh, that one's just as good as Valhalla or like Blood Gulch or something. It's like, oh, I remember this one. What is it called again? And I feel like we're going to be running into a lot more of those in further games that have either like,
Reused
if yeah,
areas.
like Halo Infinite totally could. I could totally see 343 as a way to save time and cut corners, not even necessarily in a bad way, but just like we have these assets, we might as well use them. Taking parts from the campaign open world and putting them in multiplayer. Uh,
Well,
I,
that's why people are saying if they do a battle royale, they're going to use the campaign map.
yeah.
Which, if that's what they end up doing, that's not a terrible reuse of
No,
assets.
yeah,
But
it's perfectly sensible, but it's just like
don't make a battle
something like,
royale. That is not me
don't do
endorsing that
that.
you make a battle royale. What we have is fine.
Yeah, and in
Work
in
on
this
the other shit.
in this scenario, because it's also like it's worth talking about, I think, because this is a direction that a lot of games that have the multiplayer and single player aspects, and as open worlds become more common, we're going to be seeing this more in the future. I have a feeling, like you're going to be able to feel that this part of the map was designed for something else. this map was designed for something else. This whole empty swath of whatever. It's literally just like a couple rolling hills in the campaign. Like no enemies even spawn here. There's like a lake on the like side or whatever, but there's no water mechanics in the campaign. Why is this for? Oh, it's so when the map shrinks in the battle royale, you get a really like just flat like forest section to
You
run
can
through
just
really
run.
fast. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't
I
know.
wonder
It's
if this is
interesting,
going to
it's weird.
bleed into other genres too. Because I
Mhm.
could definitely see some other games that, like, I wonder if I would love to see a weird battle royale, kind of like Naraka Blade Point, the whole melee battle royale idea, but it's actually like a full-fledged single-player game that just has a battle royale as a side
Mhm.
mode. I wonder how that would work. I'd be super
Yeah.
curious.
They're like well, what's the not God? Is it Avowed or Ashen or what's the
Avowed is the Obsidian, Skyrim, Elder
right? Not
Scrolls-y.
Avowed. Is it Ashen then? Is that the one?
Ashen
What's
is
the? You got to describe
Ashen
some
is
game
the Souls
mechanics.
Yeah,
to
you
us.
have to describe what it is.
It's that very like martial arts theme.
Absolver.
Oh,
Absolver, the one
Other A
with all the
game.
Yep.
masks. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolver.
We
I know
got
that off the
there.
top of my head because I
Ugh.
played a lot of that game.
We got
It was very
there.
good. Yeah, that it does kind of fit that bill because Absolver had this weird system where you could kind of opt in to allowing random multiplayer that was either you wouldn't know if you were in co-op or like hostile multiplayer because you could just target your co-op partner as if they were an enemy, or you could not. And the community around that game was generally really good. It kind of had the Dark Souls-y style community where it developed to have you'd have like an etiquette of you do an emote at each other, and if you do an emote at each other in an open space, you're dueling. If you do it and you're like moving along, that person's there to help you in a fight, you know, and that generally worked really well. Yeah, it's an interesting take because that's one of the few like multiplayer melee only games that I think has kind of played with that multiplayer shared space idea.
I could do with a lot more melee only games, and not like melee as in swords, like melee as in just fist fighting. Like, oh god, it's probably
Play
a little
Yakuza,
bit.
Alex.
Yeah, I really need to. It's on Game Pass. Why am I not
It's
doing it
also
right
open
now?
world and fist
Yeah.
fighting almost entirely.
I was gonna say also something like Sifu is that, but that feels like it might be harder to translate into some type of PvP.
Yeah, Sifu would be
Type
hard
stuff.
because Sifu's so designed around what the enemies can do that translating that to PvP would feel probably compromise the feeling of it. I think it'd be possible, but it wouldn't be as fun.
But it is an interesting, and I mean this almost could be its own like episode in and of itself, but just like it's always like this weird hurdle of like, all right, we have a single player game, right? How do we want to expand that? How do we take
Dude,
it?
I would love more
just
takes
take
of
it.
like Wyatt, do you remember? I know you do remember this. Assassin's Creed multiplayer back in the day. The weird multiplayer that was like you'd have to hunt
Back in the
down a
day-
person hiding in
I know
the
what you're talking
crowd.
about. Yeah.
Back in the
So
day-
cool.
Yeah.
I remember, like many others, I first heard that it had a multiplayer. I'm like, come again? Assassin's Creed, what does that even look like?
Assassin's Creed 2 has multiplayer? Assassin's Creed Brotherhood has multiplayer?
I was like, wait, is this like assassin deathmatch? What the heck is going on here? No, it's its own crazy unique thing, and then they got rid of it for
Some reason. I don't
reasons.
know.
Now imagine
So
that,
cool.
but ship combat.
Oh, don't even. Oh,
I-
right. It's called Skull and Bone.
Yeah.
Oh.
I do want to see more. I think a lot of franchises that don't have a lot of multiplayer could do with trying just like a weird multiplayer side thing. I think budget is the really big concern
Have I
for
ever-
doing this.
Have I ever told you guys about the Batman Arkham Origins multiplayer?
I
Have I
never
ever
tried
told you
that.
about that before? Did you even know that it had multiplayer?
I knew they had it. I don't know what it is, and I never tried it. So
So here's what it is. It's made by Splash Damage, the guys who made Brink and Return to Castle Wolfenstein multiplayer, couple of other things. Really cool FPS stuff. It's like 3 groups of like 4 thugs that are all part of different so it's like, oh, you've got your Two-Face thugs, you got your Joker thugs, you've got your like Riddler thugs or whatever, and they're doing like basic like third person shooter multiplayer stuff. And then there's two more players, that's Batman and Robin, trying to stealth kill everyone, basically. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen, and it was really cool.
That sounds wild.
This is insane. But I do feel like we're kind of hugely
Yeah, I
off
want to
topic
shrink us
right
back
now.
to the
little
topic.
bit.
We're still kind of tertiarily on it because I do want to talk about a little bit some of the. You mentioned games like Arkham, and I think these fit really well into the idea of a more mission-based game where you are in an open world, but when you go to start the next story mission, you are in a level. Like, it transitions you from the open world to the interior of a thing, and you're in a level. Do you think these are games that could have better spent open world resources elsewhere, or do you think this is like where a lot of games should land, is in this kind of mission-based mode where the open world is side activities and things to like pad out game time, but it's not a core component of the game?
Again,
I honestly
I
think
feel
this is
like-
where surprisingly games like GTA tend to fall.
Well, I was just about to say, I've been replaying Red Dead 2, right? And that game, if you pick a story mission, you are on rails. You can't even look in another direction without the game like
Going,
putting you
hey,
to like a fail
stop
state.
it.
It is the most linear. Like, you take 2 steps off to the left, they're like, hey, what are you doing? Go back to Charles or whoever the heck it is you're following. You're not allowed to go 2 steps off to the left. It's very like, you got this giant, awesome cowboy open world, and all of a sudden you're just like snapped right onto these like roller coaster rails. And
Man, just let me rob a train.
you cannot have your hands outside of the cart, or they will start you over again. It's weird. It's because you get this like awesome like open world that you can just kind of ride around on your horse and do whatever the heck you want, and then as soon as a mission starts, it's like a completely different game. You go from playing like I don't even know. You go from playing like an Ubisoft Far Cry game, and then you hit one button to talk to a character, and then it's like you're playing like a Naughty Dog linear action game. It's bizarre.
But do we think that's a problem? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, I honestly, because I would not like it if Red Dead didn't have an open world. I like the open world, but at the same time, I really like the story missions.
Yeah.
And
The way
is
you
it a
describe
problem
it,
that those two
I-
things are coexisting? Is it an issue of people just don't have a hard time wrapping their minds around a game that has like two different styles that it swaps between?
I think the problem is that the open world allows you to like kind of do things your own way and gives you a lot of like freedom because of it being an open world. You can do things,
And it can feel bad when that freedom is taken away.
and then as soon as you go into a story mission, if you haven't seen it, for anyone who's watching this, if you haven't seen it, Nakey Jakey does an incredible video talking about this, but about like this very specific thing. But like, for example, I'm going to use an example from his video just because it kind of illustrates things very well. There's a moment where you have to like hide a stagecoach somewhere, right? And the instructions are, oh, take this stagecoach to a secluded spot. So you're like, okay, I'm in the woods. I'll like go into the woods a little bit, and then I'll just kind of guide it around to this little. No. It's a very specific spot
Oh.
that you have to place it, and it's like, or oh, you have to like climb up this. You have to sneak into this like I think it's like a lumber mill or like a steel mill place.
Oh, and it
to, like,
doesn't even let you
destroy these
sneak in your own
documents.
way.
No, oh, I'm gonna like climb to the top of this building and then go in through the back window and stuff. And he's like right there. And this is like way easier. And I found this way out myself, and it's great. And then as soon as you go to open the window, it's like, oh, the guy destroyed the document. Sorry, you gotta try again and go in the exact way we tell you to. And so it just
feel
doesn't
like-
feel. The problem is it doesn't feel.
That seems like a bad
cohesive.
approach to it in those
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah, I feel like that's less of a problem of the open world being there, and more like that's just like
They need to find a better way to funnel
Slightly-
you into that space so you're not.
yeah, that's slightly crummy on rails design compared to why is the open world here.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite open world missions, unless Brett, you have more to say about that. I don't want to derail us if you're still going.
I can wait as long as we stay in the same.
Yeah, we're gonna say the same thing. I just want to mention Days Gone, because I think Days Gone has one specific mission type that pops up in the late game. When you have all your tools, the game goes, okay, you're ready to go take down like 1,000 zombie horde.
But you mean high poly Fortnite?
High poly Fortnite, yeah.
God.
And it will go, you're ready to do this
Hatred.
now. Go do it. And it doesn't give you prompts. It doesn't tell you this way. It just tells you, take out this horde. This horde at the lumber mill. The whole open world around that area is at your disposal. You can run away if you need to. But if you don't, you can then like choose how you want to approach it. You have this really fun kind of analysis of the area, which I think kind of plays into like the Metal Gear. Why it somewhat worked in Metal Gear Solid 5. If you can like approach from any direction and kind of choose what pathway best fits. But part of that is that those spaces are super intentionally designed to be approached from all directions and have a lot of different entry routes. So yeah, I think it's just definitely a very intentional design. Take it away, Brad.
What I was gonna say for this thing about kind of pulling in the reins a little bit, tightening the gameplay loop for specific missions compared to like the open world rest of the game, is that I think it really needs to like you shouldn't feel like the open world is optional compared to those missions. Even if on paper like it really is, and when you start thinking about it really deeply, it like literally it is optional and you could just like teleport to these places as soon as you find the lost site of grace or whatever in Elden Ring. Like you really need to feel like those zones are not optional. Like in Shadow of the Colossus, I mean, every single the only reason the open world exists is because it's just a big space. You got to get to the separate boss fights, which are just like levels of their own, and they're all small little levels. You just got to figure out the puzzle, and you win, and you got to go on the next guy.
Mhm.
However, the way that it is designed is that it's not just a big open blech to get to those spaces. It is a really pretty open world to get to those spaces. You can kind of go to them in out of order, but like you can't do anything until you're supposed to be at like the 12th Colossus or whatever is the only time you can do the 12th one. But it does a really good job of not making you think like it basically, if you're ever playing the video game and you're sitting down and you just go, man, these are just ones and zeros on the screen, man, like the game has failed you. And I think this is in the same kind of thing where if you're playing the game and it's just like, oh well, I just got to get to Colossus 8, why can't I just teleport there? Then the game would have been a failure. But because it incentivizes, this could just be me wanting to absorb the atmosphere. I don't think there is a fast travel feature to any of the save points. Um, but you have to ride to the different boss arenas. You have to not just like, oh, where is it on the map over here? You hold up your sword and it points to it, and you have to go there yourself no matter what. And if you haven't played it for long enough, you forget and you have to find them all over again. And I think that amount of player engagement is like, okay, there's enough required game here to get me to the actually required zones to do the required thing, to where it doesn't feel like this is extraneous. Where in other games or whatever, in in a more extreme example of like Red Dead's case, where if it really was, I mean, I'm saying in a more extreme of Red Dead's case, I could just talk about Halo Infinite, where it's just like, okay, this open world is here. There's kind of like, why can't I just why doesn't the cutscene play? And then the cutscene for the next mission starts with me in a pelican, and I land at the next mission starting point, and I just get a better mission because they didn't spend money and time developing the open world. Like that is a game specifically where it feels like this feels entirely
Feels like a
extraneous and
separate game
super
mode
optional.
almost.
It feels like a separate game mode. Whereas the missions, they feel super like well tuned in to your typical linear Halo fare of just going in a relatively straight line with little wibbles and wobbles here and there, and experiencing the gunplay and getting your gameplay juice from your typical Halo things. And the open world is just kind of there, like, okay,
I'm
well,
not
do I
getting.
use
I don't
this?
get Halo gameplay juice from walking around. I get Halo
Exactly.
gameplay juice
Yeah.
from combat, and now from using the grapple hook. I will give it that. The grapple
Yes.
hook gives me Halo gameplay juice.
I do
But
enjoy grappling hooks in combat encounters.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think, and to kind of go off of that point of like, you don't want your open world just to feel like completely optional. That's where Breath of the Wild's open world, I think, is kind of solves that issue. Where as soon as you leave the Great Plateau, as soon as the tutorial's over, it's like, here's the final mission. You can go fight, Ganon in your underwear with a stick if you want to.
And yet
Or
most people play that game for like over 100 hours.
because it's really fun to play, and you can find the wackiest ways to get around the open world. But
You
B,
could even go kill Ganon without finishing the tutorial or starting it.
exactly. Or B, you can engage with these other activities because it's building up your power level to go fight Ganon. It's not,
Mm.
we're going to take you through linear story missions that will then like theoretically get you ready for the final boss. It's no, you decide what kind of stuff you want to do to power yourself up to get there. You can get there at any point. It's about when you are done and you want to go fight him. And so that makes everything there. It's
Yep.
like, yeah, there's a lot there, and you don't have to do all of it, but whatever you choose to do is going to have an impact in terms of
Yeah.
like how easy or hard that final fight is going to be. So it has a bunch of content in it, but it all feels worth it because you're powering Link up as you're going.
And I
which
get
is
Zelda
mwah,
gameplay juice
genius.
by unlocking cutscenes and by finding areas because I want my cutscenes. So
Yeah.
it has a
you wanna
good
know what happens.
encouragement for exploration.
Yeah.
I think that's a good example of that. All right. I do want to ask, since we're in the open world bubble right now, do you think there is a franchise that has been typically linear that could really use an open world game? Or do you think there's a franchise that's been typically open world that could really use a linear game?
I think about this.
Brett's got his thinking hat on.
I want to say just like no, at least for the first half of that question. At least of things that I can think of off the top of my like steaming, like the cogs are like turning in opposite directions and running into each other and making an awful grinding noise head.
Yeah.
Like I can't honestly think of too many examples, but I feel like the ones that I can think of, it's like these times that Final Fantasy, Halo Infinite, or whatever have gone full open world to the point where they advertise it as open world. It's not just like, oh, you get out of Midgar now and there's a couple options of what you can do and you can fly the airship around kind of thing. It's like, no, this is going to be a full open world game type, like one that we would call open world game.
Yeah.
Like we discussed. I feel like when games make that switch, it's like there's always a degree of like, why are we here? Why, like for Metal Gear, it makes sense because ever since MGS2
And
especially.
I would still kind of almost hesitate to call Metal Gear Solid 5 truly open world, because your hub is entirely in its own space. It's not part of the open world. And when you're in a mission, you're generally locked to the area surrounding a mission. I can't think of a time I went into that game and was just like, I'm gonna go in the open world.
Because it's
of my
it's
own free
missiony
will
enough where it's like the mission is here.
But I also think
stay
it didn't
here.
hurt the game because it had all the stuff it needed. It was just put in the same world, so you could go and like explore and find soldiers you wanted if you wanted to.
Yeah, because Metal Gear, like I was gonna say, since Metal Gear 2, Solid 2 especially, has like those really super heavily baked in immersive sim elements where like, Snake is cold, so he's going to sneeze randomly. And if you roll around in the bugs for too long, Ryan's going to complain about he's covered in bugs. Like that sort of thing, that like level of detail and that level of like options of how you can like solve a room on like the big shell or whatever. Like that lends itself well to that kind of like open zone kind of thing where, okay, it's like the scale of what you can choose to do for a room has now been expanded to what can you do, how you can choose what way you want to handle this whole base or what way you want to handle this whole region or whatever. So maybe games that have more of those like immersive sim, like I'm thinking in my head, if we ever
maybe that
got
explains like why Dishonored went for those really large scale levels.
Yeah. Like if we got a System Shock 3 in the future that was like just a whole capital ship of exploration, you don't have to ever explore the whole capital ship size ship, but it's all there and there are things like I can see something because System
You can
Shock
solve.
is classic immersive sim. Like it has that level of detail and
It's the
options and
immersive sim.
builds and stuff. Exactly, yeah. Like
You
that
can solve side problems to make your situation better.
Exactly, yeah, you could like you'd actually go to like this security room instead of having it be security terminal, and like you'd turn off the security for the whole like block C or whatever. But I think that's just because System Shock already has so many immersive sim elements built into it being like the immersive sim. I feel like
Yeah.
because again, it's like you take Dark Souls, which has a lot of options, a lot of RPG elements that have a lot of open-ended things to them. It kind of makes sense that it would go to a more open route with Elden Ring, especially in retrospect, because I know I was a little worried, but they did the open zone kind of thing, and it just kind of regular Dark Souls thing, but new and bigger and open, kind of works out really well. Where in
Mhm.
Halo's case, it's like, okay, this sandbox can only carry me so far, and at the end of the day, the Halo missions only really feel like Halo missions when they're Halo missions, and that is fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you are, I guess, just linear decided start point by end point. They have
Yeah.
certain options to handle, like, oh, how am I going to take care of these two hunters? Well, I gotta. I know there's a sniper hidden up here, and I gotta go grab that and make sure I hit them both in the back. So I'm gonna let the Marines shoot them, or my friend shoot them, or whatever. And that kind of has a harder time being scaled up to a whole region where it's just like, okay,
Mhm.
I mean, am I going to drive in this straight line with a banshee or a warthog? And it kind of involves you holding the same stick for the same amount of time.
I also think there's another side to this coin that is interesting, that I often think it's pretty rare for the open world of a game to make the game worse. I think it's more often that siphoning resources from other teams to make the open world is what
Yeah.
causes the actual problem, which is why this is hard to talk about, because I do think a lot of games could have an open world and it wouldn't be bad. It's just the reality of game development means that's taking resources from, because an open world is such an expensive thing to make. You need a team dedicated to
open
making
world.
it.
You
A good
have to
open
be
world.
you have to be very aware of the amount of content that you have planned and can produce with the amount of people
And
you
the
have.
coordination that's required, and like there's a lot that goes into creating one that I think if you're a smaller studio, if you're something that can not do one, if your game doesn't need it, don't do it, because it's going to cost you so much money, and unless you're a company that's in the AAA space, that's going to be disastrous.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
that reminded me briefly of when we were talking about how Metal MGS5 was on the other side of treading the line of not really open world but open world ish open zone segments. I think was that what we
Mhm.
decided on.
Yeah, I think I would say Metal Gear still counts as open world because you
Mm.
can load into those
So
two open worlds it has and trot about,
yeah,
but
there's
the
that,
game
and
never
then
makes you.
there's on the so that's the much higher budget version. On the I think lower budget version, though I could be mistaking this just because of the art style. Origami 2 has very
Yeah.
much the hub world and then the play how you want level
Large scale
area.
levels that kind of have, you can approach them from a lot of angles. It's almost that like Hitman-y style.
Yeah.
And I'm always conflicted too with like there are games where I'm like, oh, I want an open world for this just because I want to explore the world more. Like, man, an open world Columbia in BioShock Infinite would blow my mind, and I would want that so
Oh.
bad
Oh.
just because I love that world so much. But would it make it a better video game?
Yeah. And
It would be a
would they
very
be
I don't
different
able?
video
know. It'd
game.
be a very
Yeah.
different video game, but it's like, man, I want more Columbia in my life. I want to explore because it's so gorgeous, but it's also so messed up and like bad.
Mhm.
But
And then the other
Yeah.
I
thing
need
is like
more of
would the entire other like 75% of open world be able to be created with that same quality and attention to
exactly.
detail as
Mm.
those like
Hmm.
Exactly.
specifically tailored to areas? Like that's the thing. And the thing, I mean, unless you had something else to say, because I just something new just popped into my head that
No, go for
I
it.
just the other thing too is story and narrative wise. A lot of times with like sometimes like a movie will just come out and it'll be like this one contained story, and like you'll get some people asking for, oh well, what's the sequel, why isn't this explained? And there's always a degree of like, well, maybe it shouldn't be explained, like maybe
Mm.
maybe
Leave well enough alone.
Maybe you can have your
I
own
can't-
ideas about what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I keep
little
trying
secret, when you're making a game, a lot of the times the devs don't know what these things
Yes.
are.
Yes.
Like I
And when
know
writing a narrative too.
there's exceptions to this, but I would bet you a lot of money that half of what From Software writes they don't know the answer to.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And they're just like, we want to see what people think about this. And I love that. Like I think that's a great approach to things.
Because it's like, okay, you have the mysticism of the Force in early Star Wars. Do you really
Just about to bring up
should
this example.
should we have ever been able to learn that it was midichlorians?
Should we
the whole time?
categorize that? Probably
Exactly.
not, right?
I think
Do we
it's
turn this mystical force into science?
yeah. I think the desire not for all worlds because like you said, Wyatt, I do definitely want to like actually get more concrete information on a lot of like game worlds, especially that I just want to explore more and see like, oh well, what's over there? I want to go to the big skull mountain in Halo Reach Forge world. Why can't I go there? It's right there. It looks cool. I've always wanted to go there since I was a kid. But in other examples, it's like, okay, do I actually want to know more about this, or was that put there and left to be mysterious to make my brain think that I want to know about this when in reality it's just supposed to be
Mm.
The
mysterious?
mystery is the value.
Sometimes
That's
getting
the
the answer
intrigue.
is less satisfying than nothing at all.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that is a game to game basis, of course, but I think that's still important to mention, at least for a narrative thing, whether like
Yeah.
a game needs an open world or not.
Because
And
that
yeah,
was
this
something.
this was always intended to be a trick question. I didn't think there would be any real answers to this question because I think it's a question that has no meaning. Like it's because a
it's
game
so
is gonna.
basis
It's
for
so
every
broad.
single
It's so
game.
broad and useless, which is why I asked. So,
Of course.
yeah, I think it's a really.
You thought you were
interesting
gonna
question.
trick us. We tricked you.
No, you did exactly what I wanted you to do, which is not give me examples of franchises because
I
then we could
got
talk
you,
about why it
Ryan.
doesn't make sense.
I got you.
I do want to talk about one other type of quote unquote open world because Brett and I play a lot of JRPGs now.
Mhm.
JRPGs like to do this. I don't think I would count them as open zone because there's usually not a lot to do in these sub areas. But for example, take most Final Fantasies pre 15, including 14 and 11. They're like this too, and they have a quote unquote open world where you can go most places in the world after you've been through them once. There's exceptions, like some of them are more linear than others, but generally you could travel back to close to the start of the game if you wanted to, but you'd be going through all these different transition areas and whatnot. You're never really intended to in this kind of like JRPG open worldy subzone thing, which is what Xenoblade does. And I think Xenoblade's a little weird because some of Xenoblade's subsections are bigger than open worlds in other games. Because Xenoblade loves their environment design, but I think that is like a really good middle ground for a game that wants the feeling of exploration and traveling, which I think is often the benefit that an open world has. Is it makes you feel like there is space between things. And that can be really valuable for the feeling of an adventure in like a JRPG. And like the moment you get like an airship or something like that, and you're like, oh, it's now so much easier. I don't need to go through this mountain pass to get to this town that was super hard to reach. And I think that has a lot of value in a lot of games. And I also think it's a much cheaper alternative to a true open world for other developers to do, which is why I think you see a lot of indie JRPGs go this route of having these. You can travel the whole world, but you're doing it in discrete zones that generally aren't like fully open. They attach to maybe 2 or 3 other discrete zones, and you go off in those directions. And I think like Final Fantasy 12 is probably my favorite open worldy take on this, where there's like a whole world that you do continually traverse, but it is constructed of these small areas that feel a lot bigger than they actually are, just because of the way the art is directed and whatnot. And I think that really nails the feeling of travel that some franchises want from an open world.
Yeah. And I think at least in the examples I can think of, I feel like you don't really like in Final Fantasy 9 towards the end of the game where I have like the upgraded souped up airship and I can fly around the whole world. I don't really lose I don't feel like I lost anything compared to if this game was like a modern like open world where like I could talk to every person and get a bunch of side quests and stuff
Mhm.
because the game is full of other stuff to do on for PS1 discs. Like you have a whole mini game to get, I think, a couple people's ultimate weapons or something like that, where it's just like you look at a map and it's like, oh well, here's a screenshot of this view. We're not going to tell you where it is, but just go fly on the map to where you think that view is, and there's like, I want to say like 50 of them or something. And I it sounds like something that'd be super tedious, but I just spent a whole
There's
night
a
doing
reason
that. And I was
games
like,
keep using that as an open world mechanic because it's really good for people that like to explore.
yeah, and it's just like I love PS1 graphics. I love Final Fantasy 9, but I'm not gonna bill it any higher than it actually is.
Mhm.
It's the open world is a bunch of just kind of green squares and orange squares and blue water texture from where you are. But it's like you got the nice airship music playing, you got the nice overworld music playing when you get out of the airship, and it's just like, man, I just want to hang out and explore, see what these random like landmark picture requests take me to. And it's like, you know what? This like 1999 ass game, 2000 ass game or whatever,
Wow.
sure gets a lot of mileage out of doing something like that. Where it's just like, oh, is it just like a stack of hexagons with a bigger hexagon on the top? Yeah, sure, but that is a cool like mesa butte structure made out of orange rocks that the wind eroded or whatever that the Moogle's gonna tell me happened over thousands of years or whatever. Like I'm totally sucked into it.
That was
And it
and that was oh sorry, no.
no, I was basically done.
But and that was something I had written down originally in my notes, and then I had to rewrite it down because I can't find the page. But I just written down vibes because
Yeah,
sometimes
Hmm.
if you have an open world game like Ghost of Tsushima is a good example, Red Dead 2 is another good example.
Dread
Man, if your
Delusion.
art team
Dread Delusion, yeah.
right, if your art team rocked it and you have this beautiful, gorgeous open world that like feels lived in and there's like NPCs walking around and they have their own schedules and everything. Sometimes I just want to walk into an old west town and kind of slowly walk around, taking in the sights and the sounds, and then open the saloon doors to get a nice haircut, play some blackjack, and like have a couple shots of whiskey or
And
something.
why I like that
'Cause-
you just mentioned the saloon thing because this is what broke Watch Dogs Legion for me.
Hmm.
Yes,
When you
I know what you're gonna
go
say.
to a
Yep.
clothing store and you just sit outside and
Yep.
use your phone. And
Oh,
Watch
And
Dogs
it's
2
so
had them. You could walk
I was just
inside.
about to say that. They had
Oh.
not only could you like actually walk inside, but they had different clothing stores that had different styles.
Yeah.
So like
Oh.
and they had them littered around I think it took
And like
place
you still
in
just
Silicon
open a
Valley, right?
menu once you go inside, but you can tell that someone like took some time to think, what would this clothing
Yeah.
store be? Like what would this
Oh,
have?
this one the it always stuck out because I thought it was funny. It was called Plain Stock, and it like the store is called Plain Stock. It has just the most basic boring like clothing imaginable. Or there's Torque, which is like a
Gator
biker shop,
things.
so you can get like leather jackets and like helmets and stuff. It was really cool, and it had these like different themes to
It's
it.
a lot
They're
of
all
fun.
kind of cute. Yeah. Or Red Dead 2, you walk into like the general store, right? You can walk up to the like it's like vibes and immersion, right? So like you
Yeah.
walk up to you walk into the general store, you can like here's like a horse reviver or something for like $10 or whatever. You can just go over and just pick it off the shelf and then it costs $10. Or you can walk all the way over to to like the shopkeeper and he has this entire catalog here. So you like put the catalog down and then you open it and then you're like turning to different like parts of the store and stuff, and there's different categories and sections. So you have to like flip to it. It's cool. It's like because you just want to spend time in this world and you want to be as immersed in it as possible.
Mhm.
And
Immersion. Horse anatomy.
did I advance the plot in any way? No. Did I like improve my character stats? Not really. No. But did I just walk around this cool like Wild West town and buy this awesome looking coat?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
That
That's
is
great.
definitely like
Melatonin.
the biggest like reason to actually make your game an open world game is not just to never ever 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 do something just because all the other cool kids are doing it. Be like Red Dead and just be like, dude, I just really want to be a cowboy so bad. I want to be a cowboy so friggin' bad. We're gonna make
Yep.
the most cowboy game possible. Where this is like, I don't even like, sure, historical accuracy, whatever. This is gonna be the most immersive cowboy.
You need to not
game ever.
nail historical cowboy, nail the cowboy vibes,
The
right?
cowboy vibes.
Like even the way, like when you go into the saloon, you got the swinging doors, right? Even though you just like push them open and the camera zooms in a little bit, it's like every single Western you've ever seen, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Lenny's vibing.
I don't
Lenny!
know. I don't know what kind of world the devs were thinking of when they said, "I want you to live in Dread Delusion's world," but they said it and they did it, and
It rocks.
there you go. You now know the vibes of what it's like to be, I guess, in like the middle of someone's like brain space or
Morrowind,
something.
but with a little more acid.
And this is also like
yes.
this is the thing that's important in every game. This isn't just an open world thing, but
Yeah.
open worlds need to have vibes, right? Like they
Yes.
gotta have that art direction right and that feeling right. This doesn't mean like graphical fidelity. Nah, give me Wind Waker, right? Give me an ocean that is like a flat plane, but it looks pretty, and I'm in, right?
Mhm.
I think this is a thing that's like, if you look back at successful open world games, at least games that people remember, successful is a harder word to judge because Wind Waker wasn't that successful until way later. I think there's like an interesting way to look at this and see how these games are perceived. Like I think Assassin's Creed Origins is a good example of one that was really striking because of the Egyptian theme being something that's so rare in video games to get like an open world explorable Egypt. Of course I want to go wander into the Great Pyramids. You know, I think that's like the justification for Assassin's Creed being open world is, can I go see the Great Pyramids and climb them? That's pretty rad. Alternatively, if you're in a city, open world can still have that same meaning of, I didn't play a lot of Syndicate, but I imagine it has a similar vibe of if you're really into historical London and you're like, I want to go visit the clock towers.
I want to go climb Big
I
Ben.
mean, I in all levels except physical, and then physical, it's only separating it by thousands of years of evolution. I am a monkey boy. I want to climb things, and it's not socially acceptable to just climb the face of a building in public. I have
So I
to
do
get
that
that
in video
urge out in
games.
games.
Like, I can't imagine how many people and how much time was spent modeling Notre Dame in like Assassin's Creed Unity. I will never wrap my head around how much work went into that. Do I want to climb around that thing like goddamn Spider-Man? Yes, I do. I want that
Absolutely.
so badly.
Zero question. This is why the Empire State is in every Spider-Man game prominently in the skyline. It doesn't matter if it's
Also, if you're a
important or
I'm
Marvel
gonna
not.
nerd,
check that poly density. You know I have
also,
to.
if you're a Marvel nerd, you want to climb the Avengers Tower because
Yes, and then jump
I don't
right
need
off
to give
it.
you a reason. You want to go climb the Avengers Tower as Spider-Man. Like that's it.
And then, like, because it's one of the tallest buildings there, you dive off it, you get to feel, like, the controller feedback of the wind just, like,
And you
rattling
start
your
doing air
body.
tricks and stuff. Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Spider-Man's a good example of collectibles done pretty well. I'm not going to say perfectly, because I don't think collectibles have been done perfectly yet, but it's a good incentive in Spider-Man because they give you just enough of an
You mean in
upgrade.
You mean collectibles haven't been done perfectly in any game?
Yeah, in any game. I don't think...
Counterpoint. Guardians of the Galaxy. Or are we talking about
No.
open world?
Absolutely
collectibles?
not. I mean, I don't think Guardians of the Galaxy even did
Absolutely
it
not.
correct. Are you kidding me? Because they're
That
too
was a
important in
weird
Guardians of
The
the Galaxy.
collectibles, no, because the collectibles got you basically like extra conversations.
Yeah, but some of them are so hidden, and you can miss them by walking around a corner and then trying to go back, and then suddenly, for some reason, they're just
Yeah.
blocked. Like, there's
Yeah.
other issues with that. There's a whole gamut of problems with
Once
them.
you have them, they're cool, but getting them in Guardians of the Galaxy is like, I'm not
Very
going
frustrating.
To, I'm not going to search every molecule on every planet to get them.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
those worlds are
that
not
was a good
intended
point.
to be explored the same way an open world is. Like, I don't think they have... That's the kind of thing where it just slows the pace of the story to a crawl. Whereas in an open world, I can be like, okay, I don't want to do story right now. I want to go wander around and climb buildings, and that's it. Like, I want to go find some backpacks in Spider-Man. That's all I want to do. And that's really cool because the backpacks in Spider-Man, they don't give you super large power boosts. You get like a little token that you can use to construct some costumes, but they give you lore about cool Spider-Man things, and that's what I want to find is cool Spider-Man things, and they're not too important, so if you don't want to deal with it, you don't have to deal with it. I think that's generally a good middle ground to be in, so that you're pleasing both sides of your player base.
And the other smart thing that they did was, and this is less about collectibles, but the side content for that game, they really relied on traversal and swinging for a lot of the side content, so they knew that's what to lean on if you're gonna have side content. Like, really rely on the swinging, and that was
The
the right
combat's
call.
good, the swinging is really good.
Yeah.
I think we've hit most of the notes I wanted to hit here, but I did just have a single one-word question that we did just land on, but I just wanted to say it. Collectibles?
I think yes. I think if you have an open world game, you can't not have collectibles, because I think you run into the problem we were talking about before, where it's like, how auxiliary do you want the player to know your open world is when you're something like Shadow of the Colossus, and it's literally just like the tweener space.
Or
Shadow of the
you do
Colossus has
I don't know. There's
little
lizards.
Well, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you have the little lizards and the little fruits and stuff that you can find. You have your Ico Easter egg. You have a whole world full of like weird things to look at, which isn't really collectibles, but like collectibles count as
They
the
fill the
things
same
to
niche,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, they count as the things to do on your way to the rest of the game, that they focus your brain in to distract you from the fact that, well, you could just teleport to this
You're
place
just
right now.
going from point A to B.
Yeah.
Or you could do the thing that Assassin's Creed does, where it's less about the lore of the world and just it's more about learning about that time period.
Yeah, or you get like cute, cool little customization options. Like I like the tattoo idea that Valhalla has a lot, because I think it's a really good, simple. Hey, if you're interested in these, you can go hunt them down. If you're not, you don't need to worry about it ever.
And this may not be perfect, but I think a very good collectible, while we're talking about Assassin's Creed, talking about collectibles, the sea shanties in Black Flag. You want more sea shanties, you're gonna go grab them. It doesn't matter how aggravating the path is, because like
I almost
you
think
start in one place
sea
and then they,
shanties
like,
kind of
fly away.
transcend collectible and become an objective. They are.
They
I
become their own
have
piece
to
of
have
art.
them. That's not a thing that I stumble on and want. That's a thing I seek out and find because I need it.
God, I don't know if these count as it, like in something that kind of reminds me of collectibles is they were technically counted as collectibles. Oh, when back when we had Far Changing Tides as one of the Game Pass games, they technically had collectibles, but you could use them as fuel in the ship. You could just burn them.
Yeah.
There was
Little
a potted
plant you could
plant
find
that you could grow and thing. There are different colored llama sculptures in a bunch of the different wreckage crates that you can get and things like that. That I tried to keep all of them in the little area where the plate was and hang them on the hooks. I got very distraught with myself when I accidentally put one into the furnace.
There's separate hooks in the other cabin that don't go to the
Oh, I
furnace.
know. I
Right.
ran out of those hooks.
Oh,
Too many llamas.
There's a lot of llama sculptures.
Too many llamas. I think my argument for something that did do collectibles perfectly, in my opinion, because I can't remember having a problem with any of them, is Ghost of Tsushima, because I don't remember getting any of them to be very annoying, and there was always like Elden Ring is like wants to have the one up where like, okay, you get stat. I get better jumping attacks when I get the cool like bird feather cloak armor from the cave that was totally optional or whatever. But then
Is that really
also when I
collectibles or is that gear?
well, because
Just
it's
optional.
optional, you want to do that because you get a thing. But then also you climb to the top of a mountain and you get like a mushroom. So Elden Ring loses points for that because too many times do you do a really difficult thing like killing like a bear or something, and then like behind its butt that it was guarding was like
took
a
3
flower.
mushrooms.
Okay, dude, like why? But Ghost
It
of
liked it.
Tsushima is like every single like haiku location for bandana, or
Mhm.
mountain climbing spot for a different like sword skin or whatever, that felt like genuinely rewarding, and none of them gave any stat boost or anything whatsoever. It was purely experience and purely just like you want to talk about vibes. Like the most atmospheric parts in any games ever is when you finally get to
Mhm.
that difficult to reach haiku poem writing location that's like at the top of a gorge or whatever, overlooking like a huge like cliff with waterfalls leading out to the ocean, and there's a sunset, and the music starts playing of some pan flute and some guy singing his heart out, throat singing, and it's just like, man, I earned
I'm
this
here.
experience. I'm gonna make up 3 random I don't even care that I could do a completely different thing that has nothing to do with what I'm actually seeing, but they just feel right, and I get a cool, like, straight line of fabric afterward that does absolutely nothing, but I do not care because I feel enlightened as a person after doing it because it was that cool. That's the one game where I could be like, "Okay, annoying to get in the open world? No. Worthless item? I mean, yes, I guess, but I gained something from it as a person, so that completely overrules that, and, like, actually fun to, like, do over and over and over again for the amount of bandanas and sword skins and armor sets and stuff, like, absolutely, yes. I wanted to get all of them. I think I almost did on my first playthrough because they were
And
just that fun to get.
you're forgetting one more thing that you gain from those haiku sequences, which is some
Mhm.
awesome screenshots
Oh,
and some,
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Yep.
proper wallpaper
Yeah, that
material.
whole game is wallpaper material. I
Yep.
genuinely I'd love to say about like shows and movies and games. I like especially like, oh, every single frame of this is like a
We were saying that a
desktop
lot during,
wallpaper.
Painting.
Blade Runner.
Yeah, but like
Mhm.
Ghost of Tsushima, I would, apart from maybe like the opening and closing screens where like things are jet black except for like a word, you would be hard pressed to find a single frame of that game that is not like desktop
Stunning.
wallpaper worthy. It
Yeah,
is
yeah.
insane what they did with that.
Yeah. Absolutely
I
gorgeous.
have I have a key moment from one of the Witcher DLCs as my PlayStation background.
Yep. For
There you
ages, I
go.
had the Kingdom Come Deliverance moment where you go get drunk with a priest, which
Nice.
rocked.
For the longest time, I had a screenshot from, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I spent, like, a lot of time in the photo mode and everything. It turned out really good.
All right. Well, on that note, it's time for shoutouts. We did the talk. We walked the walk. It's time to talk about shoutouts. That's it. Let's
Good.
shout the shoutouts.
I got one. I'm ready to
Shout some out,
go.
Wyatt.
Yeah. So I love the art of movie trailers. I love how they're edited, how they're put together, their song choice, what they decide to give away, how they
Mm.
try and like mislead you into like what the movie might actually be. I love it. I love it. And this is coming from someone who isn't the biggest like Black Panther fan ever. This most recent Black Panther Wakanda Forever trailer is one of the best put together trailers I've seen in a long time. Like again, as someone who isn't super emotionally connected to that, it kind of got me a little bit. I was like, "Oh, shit." Like it's just really well made. Like the song choice was perfect. It was like like every shot was gorgeous. It looked great. Um, and now I'm like way more excited to watch it than I was before, which is exactly what you want from a
They
trailer.
gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got me. They got me.
you've been had.
Oh yeah.
All right. Who's next?
I'll go. Shout out to me not having to be the corn goblin at work recently.
Corn goblin.
What a sentence.
Did you fetch the corn up until now, or
Most days I am elbow deep in corn, and I feel like I am going to have carpal tunnel syndrome
Can we
from it.
just call
goodness?
you the Corn Goblin from
It's
now
my
on?
Discord status and a bunch of other servers, sure.
No, like whenever Ryan
Good.
introduces us at the beginning of episodes, he's like, "We have
I got two
Wyatt, we
co-hosts
have
and a little
Brett."
corn goblin.
and the corn goblin.
And to my left, the Corn Goblin.
And then you just talk like Marcel the Shell for the whole time.
God.
Hi, I'm the corn goblin.
Goblin.
Please leave me alone. Hi. No, please don't kill me. I don't drop good.
Is this when we start doing ASMR?
Yeah.
Please don't drop me. I don't drop good.
My God.
Goblin.
Brett, do you want to
Okay.
follow this up?
Sure. So I started watching a little show recently in the last couple days, a cult classic known as Revolutionary Girl Utena from 1990 something, because of course it would be from then. It is like the most gay thing I have ever watched, and it handles it absolutely perfectly, because there's like, you can either go not far enough where it's like, why, or you can go too far where it's like, "Ooh, that's handled really poorly." But this is like one of very few things that I've actually been made to watch where it's like, this is actually a very convincing story and relationship that's handled very well. Made by one of the Sailor Moon guys that just completely deconstructs the entire magical girl genre. You got your cheesy 90s Japanese metal music playing for the equivalent of the transformation music every single episode for a really long elaborate animation of the character walking up to a battle arena, because that's the transformation equivalent every single
Yeah.
episode. And it is so cheesy and it is so good, and I am going to probably talk about it again when I finish it, because this is going to be a very, very good show. But it's 39 episodes, so I got a while. I would recommend it so far, though.
Nice. All right, I gotta end it out with this little bad boy right here. It's a Steam Deck.
Oh,
There he
we
is.
got here.
There's the boy.
This thing's really cool. I used it a lot more than I expected I would, but yeah, I think it's a really cool piece of tech, and it is the perfect emulation machine.
I was gonna say, the nice PS2 you got there, Ryan.
Yeah, it's a nice way to play Armored Core.
Yeah.
That's what it is right now. Armored Core and old Dynasty Warriors games is what's currently on it. But yeah, it works really well. And the thing that really surprised me is that Xbox cloud streaming to this thing works almost perfectly. You got to jump through some hoops to get it running the first time, but after that, it works really well. And for some reason, when I play games on that, way less latency than on my PC, and they look way better. I wonder if it's a 720p screen. That could totally be possible. Maybe. And it's just less stuff going through. But I've heard reviewers say that the Steam Deck has some like weird decoding thing about video decoding that works really well. I don't know if that's true. That's what I've been told.
Box, dude.
And if so, it's rad. It works really well. If not, the 720p screen means Xbox streaming works way better. Don't play Forza Horizon 5 through cloud streaming on this thing. It doesn't work so well.
How does the size feel compared to a Switch? I guess,
So I've got here. Let's do the comparison. This is a Nintendo Switch, roughly similar size screen. Then you got the Steam Deck.
Oh, Brett,
Steam
look,
Deck
there
is
you are.
There.
Quite a bit chonkier. Yeah, you can see you guys.
Oh, wow.
Quite
That
a
is
bit
rather,
chonkier.
yeah.
That's a chunky boy.
But
Yeah.
super comfortable. Like the grips are really good. The touchpad is surprisingly useful, and I've had no issue using this thing as like a full computer, to the point where I might try doing an episode of the podcast on this thing at some point. I think that would be an interesting little test for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it'd be great if when I travel, I don't need to bring a laptop. I just need to bring a USB-C hub.
You know what?
If that, because it has a full, you can summon the keyboard. So.
You know what you should do if you do that? You know how like sometimes you send like an email on like an iPhone and it says sent from an iPhone.
Sent from my
It should
Steam
be
Deck.
Oh my
episode,
God.
110 whatever.
Please
from
send a
Steam.
work
Streamed on a Steam
Yeah.
Deck.
Please send a work email with this, right?
Make sure to put that in it, yeah.
That's from a Steam Deck. Yeah, it's very funny. I think this thing's super capable, and I think you would be extremely hard pressed to find a better computer for $400.
Wow.
I think that you would be really hard pressed to find that. There's downsides, like you don't have an external. You can plug in an external monitor. You could just plug this into a USB-C dock and use it as a full computer. It totally supports that. So yeah, it's way more versatile than I thought it would be. I thought I was only going to really use this for Steam library stuff and maybe some emulation. I've been using it for a lot more. I've got a lot of stuff set up on here. I've messed with some Linux things, which I never thought I would do, that are pretty cool. There's like a Linux Minecraft-y type game called Valoran, which is like a cube world, Minecraft-inspired, open source RPG thing that's really fun.
You uttered the name of the game that should never be mentioned.
I did, and guess what? This is a game that advertises itself as inspired by Cube World, so take from that what you will.
Heinous.
Which version of Cube World are we talking about?
Oh, the one before Steam. Is that a question?
Cube World of yore.
But we have to make a distinction here.
We do. Yeah, it's super capable, very surprisingly good. I'm sure I'll talk about it more as it comes up. Might have this be a mini topic on an episode, because I think once I've used it more and had like a chance to actually take it through paces traveling, it would be a really cool thing to talk about. Main downside is battery life is inconsistent, but you have all the tools you need to tune it, because it tells you a very accurate estimation of how long you'll have to play games when you're playing them. When you boot them up and like load in, you can pull up a tab that basically tells you all the performance information. You can limit the wattage. You can like super customize how much draw it's doing. The one thing I really like, you can lock the screen to a 40 hertz refresh rate, so it's using less battery, but you're still getting smoother video than 30 frames, which has been a really good middle ground. And on certain games, you get like 6 hours of them. I don't know what it is about Warriors of Orochi 3. This game is not brand new. It's from PS3, but it just launched on Steam recently. And you get like 6 hours out of that game on this thing. And it looks good. So I think it's mostly CPU bound, but yeah. Really cool piece of tech. That's it. As always, that's the podcast. Well, we'll be back next week doing more podcasty things. After that, we have in 2 weeks, most likely, a Game Pass Games Club coming up. So, get ready to talk about...
But I'm not ready.
Games.
My controller has not arrived for
You still got a little... It might be 3 weeks if
with
your
your brain.
controller is still taking a bit. But yeah, that's the plan.